Hello, everybody. I'm Ron Miscavige, and this is Life After Scientology, and welcome to today's episode. And before I get into the actual episode itself, I'd just like to remind all of you, if it's possible, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and hit that little bell up there so whenever we have another show, you'll be notified. And then, of course, as always, if you care to participate in the ongoingness of this program, in addition to being a viewer, which I appreciate very much, go and become a Patreon. Or if you want to make a one-time donation, you can do it with PayPal. Okay, business out of the way. Now, we have back your favorite guest by statistic, and as lovely as ever, and she's ready to go. We have a very enlightening program for you. So let's get right into it. Karen DeLaCourrier. Yay!
Hello, everybody. Hello.
A one-man applause. I'm applauding for everybody out there.
The reason that I'm back so soon is we are into the lives of the cult of Scientology, and we had to lop it off on time constraints. Yeah. So this is part two of the lives. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So if we're going to get right into part two, I think did we talk about Tommy Davis, about him talking?
Oh, Tommy Davis. Oh, there is no such thing as disconnection, Tommy Davis told CNN network TV.
You know, Karen, it is so blatantly unbelievable. This is national television. He said it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there is no such thing as disconnection. That's like saying there is no such thing as birds. You can see them all over the place, and you hear them disconnecting families all the time. That's a generality. That's pretty much a specific. I know L. Ron Hubbard talked about suppressive generalities. Well, let me tell you something. There's so much disconnection that is enforced on people to break up families, friendships, job relationships, and for him to come on CNN and say that, I got to give him credit for being, we'll make him the Plutonius Maximus liar of all time. Tommy Davis, disconnection is not real.
But here's the thing, Ron. Scientology cult is sort of schizophrenic because they have policies which look so good, but then they do what is diagonally opposite to the policy. For example, they sound glorious saying love and support children in the way to happiness. That's their 10 commandments, right?
Yep. Yeah, it is.
Do you know how they treat children?
Of course I do.
I'll send you a little anecdote. Children are not only taken away from their parents, they live in a commune like living with no parents. Parents are not even given family time.
Yeah.
So, not to mention the discipline and indoctrination these kids get, but love and support children, they make children orphaned. The Scientology cult will send the mother to Australia on a garrison mission, means it's years and years long. And the father is sent to St. Hill, UK. So the parents are in different continents and the child is alone in Los Angeles. That is typical. I remember the outrage of the civilization when immigrant children were parted for 3 weeks or a month from the country went into outrage. And I thought, do you know what Scientology does? It takes away the parents for years.
Yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
Love and support children. What a lie.
You know, why don't I get into that story that guy wrote about that? Because I think this would be a good time.
Please.
I have a story here, and I'm going to read it. And this was written by a guy by the name of Attila Sonkoli. Am I saying that right?
A Hungarian.
A Hungarian guy.
Fled and escaped flag land base after serving 20 years. He literally fled like a thief in the night to get out of there.
Well, we fled like thieves in the morning. Yeah, so but yeah, you know, you're right. And he wrote this, and I'm just going to read it to you because It's a sorrowful thing, but I think it's worth reading. Let me do that, okay, Karen?
Yes, please do.
Here. And he said in this write up, I knew a young girl from Romania who was only 12 when recruited to the Sea Org at the Flag Land Base. Her name is Imoki Horvat, and she was Hungarian nationality. Now, in order to receive her B1 visa, the parents had to sign papers to give full guardianship to someone at Flag. They signed the papers to hand her over to Laszlo G. from senior HCO at Flag. Now, this girl barely knew him. I don't know and can't imagine how you hand over your youngster to a person you hardly know, and a staff member at Flag at that. Now, why is Flag so desperate to get recruits that they go after kids? This was not a single case. Many of you might remember when over 120 children from the Inland base were transferred to Flag. Int thought children was a distraction to their parents. Now, this was done in order to boost the staff members at Flag. And I remember right, if I remember right, guardians were assigned to every single of the kids there too. But they did not do too much, if anything, for these kids. They were sentencing them to grow up without parents. I always felt for the young kids at Flag who never got to be a family or get any real schooling. This is criminal. And that's what Attila wrote. And I'll tell you,
12-year-old. 12-year-old.
12,
Overnight.
12-year-old.
No more
Yeah.
mom. No more mom and
No more, yeah.
Sickening. What is nauseating is this is done for corporate greed.
Yeah.
They want laborers. They want slave labor to make more revenue. This is a completely talk about greed. This is confiscating and taking away children from their parents so the cult of Scientology makes more money. That's it in one sentence.
Yeah, and then to carry it even a little further, let's look at the state of mind these parents may be in order to do this. Now, mind you, this is a possibility on this one particular girl. Maybe the parents thought she's going to have a terrible life growing up where she is, and thought that she'd have a better life at Flag. You see what I'm saying? Like if they're from Russia, thinking,
theoretical. To sever the bond with your mom and dad,
I know.
There's just no excuse.
Listen, I no longer have my two daughters or my grandchildren or the great grandchildren by those little kids, which I've never met, and I don't even know how many there are. And there's no way that I can get in touch with them. It's a terrible situation, but it goes on. It goes on all the time.
Why don't you just make this a little more personal and cover? Jenna's told all about this in her book and on various media. Why don't you tell your you have a son called Ron Miscavige.
Yeah, and he's been out of Scientology since the 90s.
Super great guy, just a wonderful person. And he had a beautiful daughter called Jenna. Why don't you summarize and tell how much Jenna had her mom and dad? Jenna's written all about it. Go ahead.
Well, I will summarize it because it's a terrible story, and it's sorrowful for me to actually tell it. But she was separated from Biddy and Ronnie, and she lived at what's called the Ranch, which was a place that was about maybe 5 miles away from the international base in Hemet. And I lived at that place for a while when I first joined the Sea Org in 1985. And the road going to it was so bad that I actually broke an axle from driving that road every day. Isn't that wild? But all the kids that had parents at the Int base, Jenna specifically I'm talking about now, were assigned to daily activities where they had to do them. They were treated like young workers. Yeah. And if they screwed up, one of the punishments they do is they throw a bucket of ice water on their head. These are little kids now.
Little kids.
These are little kids who never had a chance to just say, let's just screw off today and have a good time playing and, play a little game of football or taggity hoop or, whatever little kids like to play these days. They never had that chance. They had
Their childhood was stolen.
Completely and utterly. And I mean, they had to keep statistics on the jobs they did. And some of it was like moving rocks or planting things or working in a field. And her childhood was torn from her. Now, she has two beautiful little kids, Archie and Winnie. And those kids with Jenna are living a wonderful life. As a matter of fact, Archie, his name is Archibald, but it's Archie. He's 11 years old. He wants to take up trumpet. And right now, as I talk to you, sitting in the living room, I just got a trumpet case in, and I'm sending him one of my trumpets and things to clean it with. And I'll get on the phone and I'll give him some lessons and stuff. He'll be 11 years old. Could you imagine if he were a little Scientology kid? They'd say, what the hell are you talking about? You're wasting your time. Get to work, Maybe not that mean, but maybe that mean.
How just to finish Jenna's story, from the time she was 5 years old to a young woman, how many times did she see her parents who were working flat out for the cult?
Wait, was it 3 times? I don't know the exact time, but it was
how many hours approximately?
Oh, no, I have no idea.
15 years. She saw her parents hardly ever.
Yeah, I couldn't estimate on the time, but if you say, I know if you say hardly ever, that's an exact estimate of what happened. I mean, and they lived right within.
Jenna's story in a book called Beyond Belief.
Yeah.
It's quite readable.
It's very readable. It's very readable. And she's an absolutely fantastic mother now, I got to tell you. I mean, the kids are living a life. They're grown up as human beings should be,
Yeah.
I can't wait till Archie picks up that horn and starts playing it, That gives me pleasure, Yeah. By the way, I started playing when I was 11 years old too. But look, let's get back to the story here. And we can take up the next subject if I think we've gotten our points across on that. And that is in 1978, Scientologists, including Mary Sue Hubbard, were convicted of perpetrating one of the largest just spy movement, domestic espionage in the history of the United States. And they call that Operation Snow White. Well, wait a minute. I thought this was the most ethical group on the planet.
They label themselves as the most ethical group on the planet. That is hilarious.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, even Mary Sue went to jail. She took the fall. She did not suck L. Ron Hubbard into it. And then she ended up going after serving, did she serve a year? I really don't remember now.
I think she was sentenced to 5 years and served 2 years. But I want to tell you something. Scientology engages in criminality wholesale. They bankrupt their public willfully, while they don't tell the public, look, we got $3 billion in reserves.
Yeah.
They make a frantic appeal, like a life or death matter, to gouge out all someone's hard-earned cash. And Scientology is a runaway money extortion racket. It's a racket.
Yeah.
And they promise the sun, moon, and stars, and it's baloney. People die off of cancer, heart attacks, they get diabetes, just like any other human being. It's fraudulent to say that Dianetics bulletproofs you and makes your health better. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. So that's another lie, overpromising and exaggerating the results of their technology. It's baloney.
Yes, and I think
the criminal acts I wanted to say, Ron, is in Scientology, it doesn't matter what you do. If it increases the power of Scientology. Example, a big donation.
Yeah.
Then whatever you did was not an overt. Because, can you just explain the greatest good of the greatest number of dynamics? Can you just explain?
Yeah. Okay. When they say the greatest good for the number of dynamics, what they're saying is this. And in Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard divided life into 8 different parts. And these parts would be called urges to survive as each of these parts. And it starts out with you as a person, which would be your first dynamic. You want to survive, obviously. And if you go into the next urge, it would be having children and getting married and raising children. That would be the second dynamic. And then the third urge would be you want to survive as part of a group. Like I'm a musician. I want all musicians to survive. I do podcasts. I would like to see everybody doing this survive and doing well and doing successful. And then the fourth dynamic would be the urge to survive as part of all mankind. And then you start getting past that, would be the plant and animal, which would be all the plants. You want all the plants to continue growing, animals to live as part of your urge to survive. And then the fifth dynamic, that was the fifth dynamic.
Yeah,
The sixth,
well,
the
it's
sixth,
just the urge to survive through these different dimensions.
Oh, okay.
What I really meant,
I'm going to get to it, Karen. Okay. The sixth dynamic would be all the planets. The seventh dynamic would be all spirits, and the eighth dynamic would be, and they don't call it God, they call it infinity. So if what you're doing measures up to being helpful to more of these dynamics than harmful, that's considered a sane decision. Now, here's what that means in Scientology. If what you're doing contributes to Scientology, that beats all dynamics. That's like having 4 aces in your hand, okay? It doesn't matter if you robbed a store or you went bankrupt or maybe you got sick because you didn't get proper food to eat. As long as you made a big enough donation, that's it. That's the most dynamics, Scientology.
You're forgiven of almost anything.
I know.
If it benefits Scientology.
Yeah.
There's something unbelievably, it's sickening how this mentality is. Scientology must survive no matter what. And screw the little guy.
Well, it is true. And I've mentioned this many times, and I think you've mentioned it too. It's done on a little by little basis. It doesn't happen in one stroke like that. With almost all people, I think it takes a little while. You get conned into doing these things that work in the very, very beginning, little things. Then you start thinking, hey, everything works about Scientology. So now things are introduced to you that don't make sense. And you say, well, so far it's been good, so I'll accept it. At that point, you're hooked. And then you go to study 5 days a week and you brainwash yourself. You're paying to brainwash yourself. So then if they can say, well, we want you to take a third mortgage out on your house because there's people who are going to die if you don't give us the money, you go ahead and do it. Eventually, you can't make all the payments. You go bankrupt. But all those people that you helped, which was put forth as a lie to you by the IAS, well, I helped a lot of people. It's hard for me to tell this and try to sound reasonable because it's not. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you try to make sense out of it, you ain't going to make sense out of it.
We've said it before and we'll say it again. I was in 40 years.
Yep.
Ron was in 42 years.
Yep.
We have a combination of 82 years of living morning, noon, and night.
Yep.
Breathing all this, being conned and believing we were saving the planet, saving civilization. That's another lie. We're saying global salvage keeps being used. They're salvaging a planet that's gone awry. And one of the big cons in getting your money now is 2 promises they make. We're going to eradicate psychiatry. We're going to make psychiatry vanish of the face of the earth. These are MDs who've done 7 years of training and residency in, and only the final specialty is psychiatry. Now, I did a study before this show last week. There isn't one med school on planet Earth that has stopped offering psychiatry as a specialty for graduation. Not one med school. You can go to the best med schools, the Harvards, the UCLAs, Massachusetts General, the absolute cream of the crop. Even did you know that Morton Plant is in the top 10 hospitals in the United States? Morton Plant at Clearwater is in the top 10 hospitals in the whole of the United States.
Actually, no, I didn't.
Not one of them have stopped having psychiatry in the curriculum. And 40 years ago, to extort your money, Scientology promised eradication of psychiatry. They haven't stopped one medical school teaching psychiatry. The second lie I wanted to tell you, Ron, was give your money and we'll have a safer planet. We're going to make Earth more sane. We're going to make Earth less criminal. We're going to make Earth a higher, beautiful Disneyland, practically. Well, let's look at the recent looting and burning, and let's look at the actions going on right now.
Yeah.
How much safer is planet Earth now? Can you read that little blurb I sent you of what auditing all these BTs?
Well, I will just give you in my own words, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, you could fool me if you're telling me it's a safer place than it was then. There's just no two ways about it. But when you do these upper levels, what you're doing is you're getting rid of spiritual beings called body thetans that are in or around or on your body.
Yeah.
And there is a procedure that you
allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah, okay. Well, now there's a procedure that you're given to get these little thetans, little spirits, to realize, to realize that they're spirits, and you're truthfully exercising them for your body. Now, supposedly, they're supposed to go off and pick up a body as a kind of a clear, because that's considered to be, once the person realizes, hey, I'm a spirit, I'm a thetan, boom, he goes off, picks up a body, and he leads a very nice ethical life. The theory is that after years and years and years of millions of these body thetans being exercised and cut loose in society, we'd have a more peaceful society, a more ethical society, and a better place where people live. That hasn't proved the case. There's got to be another answer to it, but that isn't it. I don't know.
It's they just lie.
I know.
Lies. They lie. That give us your money. Would you like your grandchildren to grow up in a dangerous civilization? Just give us your money and we'll make the civilization better.
Yeah.
Make the civilization less criminal, and so on and so forth. And there's a sucker born every minute. As I talk to you, there's a sucker giving his money right into the cult right now, draining his life savings.
Yep. Well, not only his life savings, but committing his future to huge debt in order to do it. Yes. It's not, I mean, you give up the money you have currently, and then you get in debt so far that now you're a slave to paying off that money. I mean, I personally know of a guy who did that, and I don't want to name his name because I don't know if he's still in or he's out, and I don't want to throw him under the bus. A very nice individual. He did that. He got up to OTA, and then he had to drive his pickup truck to a hidden location. He couldn't afford the payments on it, and he needed it because he was a contractor. And if it got repossessed, he wouldn't even be able to go to work. And this is after achieving OT8, which is the highest spiritual advance that Scientology offers. And, you know, I wish there were something good I could say about them, because it's hard to imagine it. Do you know that?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like I remember years ago, Michael Roberts did this short movie as a chaplain, telling people if you couldn't afford auditing, you could go to some place and get free auditing. Where is that place? Is that in Siberia or is it in the North Pole? Because I've never seen it in an organization where you can walk in and say, "Here, I'm here to get some free auditing." What do you think they'd say? You know, what the hell are you talking about, right? Oh, they would say, "Free services, free fall." That's another quote. If you give away something for nothing, you're going to go down the tubes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the way it goes. And then I think there was another thing that we wanted to get into, which is
another lie, another flagrant lie, Ron, is we have 10,000 churches and missions worldwide.
That's right.
10,000.
I mean,
people who were really on the lines, statusizing everything. Do you know a guy called Ulf Olafsson? Ulf?
Of course I do.
Yeah.
Ulf Olafsson was at the land base. Excuse me, not flag land base. He was at INT, and he worked in the audio section.
Yeah.
And he was quite a character. He was a pretty bright guy, you know.
Yeah, he fled as well. Well, he wrote up a very good thing based on analysis and actual statistics. There are no more than 300 churches worldwide. This 10,000 is an inflated, ludicrous figure. And some of that 300 are little missions out of a living room in an apartment building where you have to make an appointment, and they're only open Tuesdays and Thursdays. Right down the road from where I live, there's a so-called mission, Lost Fearless Mission. And it's by appointment only, open 2 days a week.
Well, I'll tell you, in Milwaukee,
that's the kind of statistic that they're counting as
and I'll tell you, I ran across a place in Milwaukee that was a couple doors down from my insurance people I bought my automobile insurance with. And I went there. I was going to walk in and say hello to them. And the door was locked, and they posted their hours. And it was about 2 hours a day in the evening. And even that closed down. And I guess that was counted as a mission as part of the 10,000, you know?
Yeah. They just have to make themselves look good. It's a compulsion. And again, there's policy which says never lie in PR. Don't lie, it'll backfire.
You're right.
Yeah. They lie. Look at the hate pages they make on their targets.
Yeah.
Shoes of lies. Complete and absolute lies.
Yeah.
Every single person who ever served the church for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they were all wife beaters and perverted, sexual, depraved individuals, rapists, prostitutes, literally, and yet they had very high positions in the church.
I know. I mean, don't they ever?
Super technology and confessionals and stuff didn't know that these were drug runners.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. That they were drug peddlers, drug runners, violent felons, sociopathic individuals, antisocial personalities. So how come they were at the peak in very senior positions like Mike Rinder?
Like Mike Rinder, exactly. I mean, he was the spokesman for the church. He went to England to handle BBC and the things that they were going to say as a spokesman for the church. Now look at the hate sites they have on him. He should have been shot a long time ago, you know?
Were they so idiotic and demented that they couldn't tell that Mike Rinder was all these things they now accuse him of?
I know.
In a snitching culture where the wife would have written that up immediately.
Yeah.
Because everybody rats out everybody to look good to
Yep.
RTC. Everybody snitches and
Yeah.
reports on everyone else. So this Kathy, his former wife, never wrote a single report
Yeah.
on his so-called rapes. Oh, just ludicrous. So they invented as they go along, invented out of whole cloth. It's laughable. It's just, but nobody even reads those sites. They,
No.
you know.
No, but I'll tell you, I think if any point we've made with this little discussion we had is that a lie in Scientology is not considered to be a lie by them.
Yes, correct.
Isn't that
It's
wild?
not a lie.
It's
In
not a lie.
In fact, they've even changed the definition of lie. The cult has even changed the definition of the word lie. They call a lie an acceptable truth or a shore story, which is a blatant lie. Shore story means from back when you were on the ship, you have certain secrets that only shipmates know. The shore story is what you tell the public who are not ship staff. We had a lot of shore stories when I was on the Apollo. I'm sure Free Winds has its shore stories.
Yep.
So a shore story is a blatant lie told to people outside the cult. They also call it a white lie. You know, they have a policy letter on called Propaganda by Changing the Definition of the Word. It's in the PR series.
Right.
So they changed the definition of lie to these things: white lie, short story, acceptable. Ron, they're a church.
I know.
They're not a church, they're a cult, but how ecclesiastical is it to just wallow in lies, morning, noon, and night? If the cult is saying it, it's a lie.
I'll tell you, man, it is what it is, as they say. And I hope the viewers of this are more enlightened than they were when they started watching this. And if you're still in Scientology, make the move. Just walk away. Don't wait for anything else to happen. Just get out of it, okay? And I want to thank Karen for coming on this show with me. This was very nice of you. And to all of our viewers, if you want to help out in the ongoingness of this, you can go to therealronmiscavige.com. You can become a Patreon, or you could give a one-time donation through PayPal. But at the very least, if you could please subscribe. If you're not a subscriber, I would appreciate that. So, Karen, I want to thank you. Do you have any last words to say before we end off?
I think that it's always a good idea to examine. Look at if you have to listen to their side of the story, examine the other side of the story. There are so many websites now giving you the darker side of Scientology. For goodness sake, don't get lured in. Google is your friend. Put in some keywords and examine. Use critical thought.
Mm-hmm.
Very carefully step back, and you will see the lies for yourself.
And I'm not going to add one more word to that. Thank you very much, Karen. And from Karen and myself, thank you for joining us today. Please tune in for our future interviews, or whatever you want to call these podcasts. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody. Love to all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye, Karen.